Welcome back to the channel, and we're back with another Wonderland video. So today we are just going through the Treasury Operators AMA. You'll be listening to this one shortly. Again, not too much news for this one, and also the whole FTX crash, etc. It's not been looking good for crypto the past couple of days, but hopefully this can lighten the mood with this Treasury Operators AMA. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Also remember, again, nothing in this video is financial advice. Please do your own research and only invest what you are willing to lose. But have a nice day and enjoy.
Welcome everyone to today's AMA here in Wonderland with our Treasury operators, Deal and the Ferengi. We'll first go over the questions that were submitted in advance, and then we can take hands from the audience and just get a feel for how these gentlemen are thinking that are running our Treasury currently. All right, let's go to the submitted questions. I'm gonna do, all right, I'll just ask it because we have time. Now X wants to know, when are we going against CZ?
Rengi, I'll let you answer that one.
Okay. I didn't really think that was a serious question.
Oh, he's dead serious.
Well, I don't know if we will do that. I mean, we know how that ends, right? They'll dump your tokens and then you're wrecked.
All right. Good answer. All right. Next question is from Jay Clemens. When deciding on Treasury investments, whose responsibility is it to make sure what is being considered does not violate existing governance?
Yeah, so I would say it's really the whole team's job to try to, follow governance as closely as possible. Anytime we propose anything that we think might be a governance concern, because we try to follow it as closely as possible, I'll usually consult with Nolex.
Right, we have an elected policy officer.
Right, he's our governance guy, and we have dozens and dozens of pages of governance. So he's like my go-to guy whenever I have any questions. In terms of like, there was a second part to that question too, right?
Yes, you ready for the second part?
Yeah.
All right. Part 2 of Jay Clemens' question is, if governance is violated, what do you propose the corrective action and the timeline for it should be once discovered?
So I think if the community is concerned that governance is being violated in some way, they should present it as a concern through the governance forum, and then we can address it as a DAO. Hopefully that, could get addressed pretty quickly and we could figure out a resolution. We try to follow governance as closely as possible. And, sometimes that can be difficult, but we do, watch it very diligently and closely to try to make sure that we're not violating anything.
Yeah, and just to add a bit on that subject or that point, if governance is violated, another corrective action that can be done, and it doesn't necessarily even have to do with governance, but WIP 14 has been established as a way for the DAO to, the DAO can propose to walk back anything that we propose and basically undo that investment through WIP 14. And so I think that's that's important, because if something happens, if we do something that the DAO do not agree with, then they always have the opportunity to bring that in front of everyone and undo that decision.
Definitely. Jay Clemens, does that satisfy your question? Well, I don't see him typing, so I'm going to take his silence as a yes. And our next question is from All Stunners. Do we already have an indication of our losses after yesterday's and today's bloodbath?
Yes. We have had some unsecured lending exposure, all of which we have pulled. We started pulling 2 days ago, actually, so even before FTX completely crashed. And we have taken no P&L losses on the unsecured lending or anything else. We are down about 3 million roughly in directional exposure, which we had through the GLP and the ETH position. But when it comes to like the bloodbath yesterday and us exiting positions, we haven't taken any hits there now.
Yeah, just to clarify that a little bit, I think we still have about 2 million in unsecured lending and Bastion on Polygon, which we're working to remove. Once that's gone, all of our unsecured lending exposure will be eliminated. So we came out unscathed.
And another thing that is important to note there is that we still have Bastion left, but Bastion is the one unsecured lender which has informed us that they actually have limited FTX exposure and relevant counterparties. So it's not a worrisome position, but we are still pulling it and waiting a few days just to be sure, let the market settle a bit.
Yep. Our whole team really was great at responding very quickly to this, between the risk officer first, pointing out and making suggestions, and then Treasury operators proposing for these different positions to be pulled, the Treasury Council, following through to enforce it, and then our multi-signers have been working to, do transactions whenever there's liquidity to do so. So thanks to all of you guys for the coordinated effort.
Yeah, and just one more point I'd like to make too is with the unsecured lending, when the utilization rates are high, there's limited liquidity. So I know some people were asking like, well, why aren't you guys pulling out of this right now? What's the delay? It does take some time because we have to wait as liquidity becomes available and the utilization rates drop. We can continue to pull more and more, but it's kind of a bit of a process, right? So even though we voted to remove all this exposure, 2 days ago now, there's a little bit of a delay there in actually accomplishing that.
And then coordinating with the multi-signers takes a little time as well when they do the transactions, but
Sure.
it's, moving along as quickly as we could hope, and I think it's gone pretty well.
Oh yeah, it's gone very well.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at our position in the market today versus elsewhere, I'm very happy to be sitting out here.
Yeah, I mean, our directional exposure is like less than 10% of the treasury right now. So I think we're really well positioned, for any further fallout or contagion risk associated with FTX. So I'm glad that we're in the position we're in, and I think we're doing pretty well relative to Bitcoin and Ethereum and a lot of these other tokens.
Yeah, sure. All right, the next question is from 0xFry. Just to be clear, per the TAP Treasury allocation proposal, will revenue share farm be evaluated every quarter to decide the percent of APR based on the quarter's profits?
I think probably the best way to approach this, and we're still kind of undecided. I think we need to figure this out as a team, how we want to go about this. But just looking at it quarter to quarter, seeing what the profits are in terms of farming, and then allocating what I think it's 25% according to the governance. So based on that, I think it would be the easiest way to do it. If we try to do a shorter time frame, I think it would be really hard to figure it out on such a short basis. So I think that would be the best way to approach it, would just be quarter to quarter and see where we're at, make the calculations, and then determine what the yield would be on the farm.
Right. Next question is from Kingmaker. He has a couple. The first one is, can you spend maybe 2 minutes explaining current market conditions from your perspective, what your strategy is, the risks you are evaluating, etc.?
Bringa, you want to take the lead?
Sure. So, I mean, the current market environments are they're not very easy. It's not an easy market to navigate because, I mean, you have the inflation, you have the macro situation, you have Asian currency risk, sovereign debt risk, and that's just on the macro side. Then you have a lot of internal risk in crypto. Everything from centralization to backing to liquidation mechanics on a stable coin is important. So we look at a lot of things, right? But I think that our strategy, as corny as it may sound, I mean, we're just trying to be very, very patient, because patience rewards people in markets like these, because you have to think long term and not be too scared, if that makes sense. I mean, we're not going heavy on the directional exposure. We have some because the community wants some. So that, have manifested itself mainly through GLP, and we also have a little bit of ETH left. But other than that, I mean, it's not a good idea for us to try and time the market. Here's where I, the TO, think the bottom is, right? That's not going to do us any good. What we need to do is, watch the market, watch for catalysts to, for the market to switch, and we just have to be patient.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think longer term, we just have to continue to look at the macroeconomic indicators and where things are headed, what the Federal Reserve is doing, things like that, because that's ultimately going to translate to where crypto prices head.
I mean, right? Yeah, sorry.
So, we're well positioned being in stables. The point that I want to make that is if the market does dump further, in some ways it may be an advantage for us because we can stock up on directionals at a later time. And then when we do hit a bull market again, eventually, we'll be well positioned to really take advantage. So we kind of just have to take it day by day, week by week, and kind of see where things go, and then make some decisions from there.
Yep. All right. Moving on to part 2 of Kingmaker's question. Are you satisfied with your role? Is there anything you think would be great to have added in terms of power as, I think he means TO. Yeah, he just edited it. Your power in terms of, is there anything you think would be great to have added in terms of power as Treasury officer?
So this is a really interesting question, right? Because this role is different from like a traditional TM, right? There's a lot more checks and balances. We have the Treasury Council. Now we have the TMPs. So, there is some things that I think would be nice to have. For instance, if we want to exit positions quicker, it would be nice to have something in place. And, maybe we can discuss this as a DAO about some capabilities either for the TOs or the risk officer, or something in terms of changing how many votes are required for us to exit a position, because that's a big risk for us, right? If we can't exit a position quickly, it could impact us in terms of potential losses and things, right? Unsecured lending is a great example. Like, we really need to be able to exit quickly, and I think we did pretty good. But having some options in terms of making it more efficient and even quicker would be nice. And we can, discuss that further.
Definitely.
Bringa, anything you wanted to add?
Not at the top of my head now. Basically, I think that we have been in this position for such a short period of time that it's hard for me to think of anything I want to change already on top of my head. I think that I'm sure that I will have more to say about this further down the road.
Cool. All right, next question is from Nal X, who asks, can you talk about the two pending TMPs?
I'm gonna let you go ahead and start with that deal.
Sure. So we'll start with the one regarding locking the UWU and Pool 2 LP. Obviously, right now we're sitting on a lot of UWU that's just sitting in the wallet, not making us any money. And that's due to the fact that there's some governance limitations there in terms of locking tokens. So we wanted to make sure we were compliant with the governance. So that's kind of why we put that through the TMP process, because we want the DAO to approve that. What else was I going to say? The other one was regarding the farming allocations, right? Because the tap basically limits us to 10% exposure to one protocol. So in order to be compliant with that, we wanted to increase the exposure there a little bit to UWU, to our basically what our existing exposure is right now, right? About 16% of the treasury. The rationale for it is that the farms are pretty high yielding right now. It'll allow us to continue to acquire UWU, which we can put into Pool 2, and the yields are really excellent right there. So given we're in a bear market, there's not a lot of great opportunities right now. So I think this would be an ideal way to allow us to make some money here.
I love hearing you say uwu. All right. Oh, we have one more submitted question from Blorp, who asks, are there any planned investments in early projects like previously done with BetSwap?
Okay, so first I'd like to take a moment to thank Blorp for his amazing name. But secondly, there are no planned investments because basically EOs do not have the mandate to do seed investments, it seems. So that's going to be something that falls on Ruin, I think, now as his financial officer. But there's nothing planned. If anything comes to Ruin's table that he considers, he's gonna have to answer. But he's not here today, so I don't think that. No, we can't speak on this as TOs.
Right. I see Matt is typing in the AMA questions channel, so we probably have a couple more questions that are about to be submitted here.
So
Okay.
can we go get a coffee and come back when Matt is done?
Intermission.
Now asked, can you make your best uwu impression?
Oh God, I'm not doing that.
And then if anybody who's listening wants to ask a question on the stage, just raise your hand and we'll bring you up. Okay, Matt asks, are there any plans yet to utilize the liquid staking platform with Treasury assets when it launches? Are there any plans for spending anything on advertising for the liquid staking platform?
That's a really good question, and it's also really hard to answer. Yeah, I'm not sure that we have concrete details established on all that yet. It'll have to be further discussed and obviously presented to the DAO so everybody can vote on it. In terms of any further funds that get allocated or used or decisions that are made.
And then as far as he gave a thumbs up. As far as advertising, that's definitely something that we could consider. I think our next steps now is going to be working on getting Wonderland registered and turn it into a legal entity before we start to do any sort of marketing or advertising. But once those steps have been taken, then we can start looking into getting that started. And I know you have some expertise in that area as well. That was specifically referring to Matt, but I see Wilson is typing. I think he might have another question for us as well. Yes, Wilson asks, concerning Bitcoin specifically, is Wonderland eyeing an opportunity to acquire Bitcoin at these or potentially lower prices using DCA since nobody can time the market?
Well, one thing that I can say is that we do have the covered calls position on Bitcoin right now. And that's an options position which it prints in markets that move sideways or down. And what happens when the options expire below the strike price is that we acquire more of the underlying asset. So, I mean, depending on how you look at it, you could already say that we are accumulating into a Bitcoin position over time. But yeah, like if the risk reward is preferable, then absolutely we would look at acquiring more. But we'll take that when the day comes, right?
Right.
Deal?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we just need to take this day by day. It's still too soon to determine what the contagion risk is with FTX.
Yeah.
So we have to consider that as well, right? It would be kind of risky, I think, to just pile on directional until we really know exactly what's going on with the FTX related risk. But if the market continues to trend downward and we see some light at the end of the tunnel, I definitely think we can start looking at increasing directional exposure. So we're well positioned for the turnaround. But that likely won't be for a little while here yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? With rising interest rates like this, I know a lot of very smart people that are, all pretty much in agreement that we're seeing a recession on the horizon in 2023. So, according to a lot of very smart people, we're not even halfway through this stuff yet, right? I mean, we're hoping here that we'll see the end of the light in the end of the tunnel soon, and that things will get better. But they might actually just get worse. So, we are trying to be as extremely patient as we can because you really don't want to jump the gun too early on these things. In general, people have a lot higher returns, those who bought 3 months after the bottom, than the people who bought 1 month before the bottom. So you have a much larger playing room in buying after the bottom rather than trying to time it when it comes to returns on average.
I agree with that.
Yep. All right. Do we have any other what's in this channel? No. Do we have any other questions from anyone in the audience? Feel free to raise your hand if you want to come up here and chat with us. Otherwise, if you guys just want to talk about anything in particular while you're up here, use this as a platform to introduce yourselves.
I see Nalex asked when Lambo. I think they're on back order till 2024, bud. Anything you wanted to mention, Ferengay?
No, I'm
Further
just
comments?
looking up if they sell Lambo keyrings. No, but I don't think that I have anything more right off the bat. I just appreciate to get a moment to explain to holders how we feel and think about the market. So thank you, Kingmaker, for that question.
Yeah, that was cool.
And we have the CPI coming out tomorrow, so it's gonna be a busy week, no matter which way it turns, right?
Yeah, I imagine the volatility is going to continue going into tomorrow.
But it's also so, just to rant a little, but it's so difficult in crypto compared to TradFi because the tail risk is still pretty much undefined. You never know where cross contagion is going to come from. It can come from anywhere at any time, because as compared to TradFi, the ecosystem is largely built on top of each other, right? Like Circle being an investor in FTX is an example. Like, I don't know if it's going to spread there. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of unknowns, right? That's why, even though we want to deploy fully and earn as much yield as possible, I don't believe that it's a bad thing to be at least a portion liquid. I mean, even that in itself entails risk, because you have to hold stablecoins. Because they are not inherently risk-free. Anyone who says that is an idiot, right?
Yep.
So I think that it's not as easy as people think. And then when you look at something like 3Curve, where you have exposure to 3 or so, sometimes 4 stable coins, compared to the yield that you're getting on a lot of these, it's not really worth it. That's why we've in part been going with unsecured lenders, because we can limit an exposure to one institution, say one market maker, and we can give them X amount of dollars, and our risk will be much more defined and controlled than in 3Curve, and you would earn a higher yield as well. But then again, obviously you can't put all of the treasury into that, because that's poor risk management. So you have to do it, you have to balance it, right? And I believe we've done a pretty good job at that so far.
Agreed. We have another question from Nal X, if you guys want to take it. He asks, can you talk about some of the investments or strategies you guys will look into moving forward, or certain sectors you'd like exposure in?
So this is a good question. I think Ferengi was looking at a couple convex pools that had some pretty high yields. So those are potential opportunities. What else here? In terms of like unsecured lending exposure, obviously we're going to hold off on that for a while until we can fully assess the situation, and we'll reevaluate it at a later time. But for now, we're going to just kind of sit on the stables. As certain farms with high yields become available over time, obviously we're checking the markets every day to see where the yields are at, and they continue to fluctuate. So we'll be moving in and out of positions based on the yields. It's really hard to predict where exactly we'll be going to, because the yields are constantly changing.
Yep.
So I'm not sure I can specifically say any investments are on the table at this time. We also want to mention, though, we have some TMPs. I have a couple more TMPs I'm probably going to propose this week, so the community can look at those too and vote on those. And a lot of stuff I'm going to try to do through TMPs, because I think it's a good way to allow the DAO to give their input and vote on things. So
Right.
as long as it's not time sensitive, I think it's a good option for us.
Definitely. We have another question from Maharaja Loki asking, saw a video talking about ETH supply. Can anyone talk about this and what's happening, if anything is happening at all?
Well, it's always been known that ETH would become less inflationary/deflationary when the merge hit, right? And I think that's so far turned out to definitely be the case. The burn rate is currently almost 2,000 ETH per year, and the issuance is 600,000 ETH per year.
Yeah,
No,
I think
sorry, almost 2 million ETH is burned a year.
I think the fact that ETH is becoming more deflationary is definitely going to be a catalyst long term.
Yeah.
So it's it's a good thing relative to all the inflation that's going on globally, which will make it a great investment long term.
Yep.
Yeah, like I think that the only thing that you have to watch out for when you think about it long term is that EVM obviously has scalability issues. But I'm still bullish on ETH, don't get me wrong.
I see another question from Nal X. Any thoughts of the whole FTX/Binance situation in terms of broader or longer crypto vision other than market impact? As far as centralization is concerned.
I mean, obviously, we want to try to avoid as much centralization risk as possible long term. That's kind of the reason we try to avoid like USDC and stables like that. Is for that exact reason. We're sitting on a lot of DAI at the moment, DIA. So, the contagion risk with FTX is could potentially be pretty bad. So, we're trying to avoid centralization risks like this as much as possible by sitting on stables and pulling liquidity the moment that we hear events like this unfold.
Yep. We have another question from Wilson asking, obviously, it's impossible to predict black swan events. However, do we see any potential risks with the stables we currently own of depegging amid these harsh market conditions?
I think depegging is. Go ahead, Ferengi.
No, you go ahead.
Depeg is always a possibility. I mean, you look at all the UST situation and even USDT for a time depegged amongst many other stables. So it's always a risk. That's kind of why I think DAI is obviously the safest option, and we're sitting on a lot of that at the moment.
DAI and LUSD, right?
Well, we don't have a lot of LUSD, but I think in terms of stables, LUSD is probably the safest. Just overall. The problem is right now we can't, we don't want to pay 104 for LUSD, right? Especially with chicken bonds and everything. It could potentially drop back down to $1. So there's a little bit of price risk there. So just to mitigate it, we're staying away from the stables that have higher depeg risks in our view. But we do have to. It's better to have a portfolio that's mostly in stables versus directional, right? Because we're trying to limit directional risk with this market. So it's kind of a necessary evil.
Yep. All right, we have something from Deep Space Mine, but he says this is more of a comment. FTX US was in process to acquire or bail out Voyager Digital, currently in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I wonder how yesterday's event will affect this. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
No, it just seems like the jig is up for FTX. I mean, obviously we don't have anything concrete yet, but there's being rumors about a 6 billion hole in the hull. So I don't know. There's not going to be a bailout of Voyager, I think.
Yep, yep. Do we have any other questions from anyone, comments, things you'd like to chat about with us today? Don't be shy. You can raise your hand or you can send it in the text channel. It looks like this might be it though. Unless there's anything else on that you guys wanted to talk about today.
I don't think so.
All right, then it
Well,
looks like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ferengi.
no, I actually thought we would get more attendance considering the market environment, but I am still very thankful for the people who came here and asked us questions.
Yeah, definitely. I think they are happy they don't have to worry about this one investment. All
Yeah,
right.
and also if you have any questions anytime, you don't need to wait for an AMA. You can just reach out to Deal or me personally, because we're always going to be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yep, definitely. All right, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this with us today, and thank you for everyone who tuned in to listen and chat with us.
Yeah, no problem at all.
We'll see you all on the next one.
Thank you.
Have a
Sounds
good
good.
day.